Why do we stare out windows at nothing, or gaze into open flames? Why do we stand under the faucet long after we're done showering, or turn on familiar music in the background? And how does this change how I view thought and language, creativity? On long drives, I used to think about how it was crazy that there was this constant voice just narrating everything we saw or thought or did. Like, who was this voice talking to? And why couldn't it ever take a break? I would try and see if I could think nothing. 3, 2, 1, and you can imagine it was like telling someone not to think the word water or not picture a pink elephant. The word nothing would flash across my mind, and then the stream would immediately resume. Oh well, I mean, what would it be like anyway? Just totally zoned out, empty shell? Much later, I learned that there's a name for this. Internal monologue. That was nice, but what really threw me was learning that some people didn't have this. I think we take for granted that outside of cultural differences, everyone's basic human experience is fundamentally the same. But this seemed like a fundamental difference, a very basic separation of what it was like to be a sentient being. I mean, what was it like to be one of these people with no inner voice? What did go on in their head? Was it just empty up there? I mean, were they NPCs? But you just chalk it up to one of those things that you'll never experience firsthand, like growing up in a foreign country or seeing yourself from the outside like other people do. And then the shift happened, a crystallization of several ideas that had been floating around for quite a while but hadn't yet been connected. Do I have one? I was watching a Hank Green video where he was talking about not having an internal monologue, but how he used to, and how his thinking works now. And it felt familiar. It planted a seed. And then I read a comment on the video. This person said they thought they had an internal monologue, but then they would try and tell someone their ideas and couldn't. It was just a mess. They realized that there was far less language involved in the thought than it had seemed. And that's when it hit me. I'm the exact same way. I can usually understand concepts and develop ideas pretty well. But then I try to have a conversation about those ideas that I've been mulling over, and they make absolutely no sense. I'm saying bits of what I mean, but I'm doubling back, leaving things out. Now, you might say this is some sort of social anxiety, and that isn't the whole picture. For one, I can sit by myself and have the same problem. I've tried many times making voice notes for ideas, and it just doesn't work for me. It's the same nonsense. And I don't really have this problem with normal conversation. I can carry on a conversation fine about stories or just whatever. It's just with ideas. And they don't even have to be particularly abstract ideas. I could have an idea for a video or a project and sit down and try to tell Leah about it, and it'll sound like the dumbest thing. So what's going on here? Why doesn't the idea translate into words? As I thought it over, I realized I'm not thinking in language. I'm thinking in thoughts and ideas. You see, I used to think thought was language. And I mean, that seems fairly obvious if you always have this voice going on in your head, right? That is your thoughts. Sure, you can picture images and remember smells and sounds and feelings, but at its most basic, thinking is words, right? But really, thought is something deeper than language. These are concepts. These are more fundamental than the words used to express them. It's something more universal. So when you try and talk about your idea to communicate them, there's this translation process going on. There's the thought, and then there's the expression of that thought into spoken language. Whatever part of your brain that's responsible for that translation isn't always fluent either. It gets backed up, confused on how this or that should be said. Now, some people's translators, of course, are more fluent than others, but if you're like me, you've probably said something along these lines. It made sense in my head. It's easy to feel insecure about that, to think that your ideas aren't good. But it's probably just this translation that's getting jammed up. Now, maybe this next part is some quirk of my own, but I have a big exception to this translation error. Writing. My spoken word and written word translators must have had different teachers, because I can sit down and write and it comes almost fluidly. This is something I was always curious about too, with people that don't have an internal monologue. How did they write? Did they just sit down and then they were surprised at what ended up on the page? And as I've reflected on my own writing practice, honestly, yeah, that kind of is how it works. I sit down and I have a concept and sure, a few phrases and points to make, but I don't know how I'm going to get from this to that or how I'm going to end it. I don't even know what the next sentence is going to be most of the time. But I sit down and write, and at the end, there's a piece that's articulated into the English language. But this isn't a video about writing, so I'm just going to leave that there for now. Now, maybe you find all this interesting, or you don't, but why does it matter? Is there anything we can take away from it? Well, I think it does matter, and there's a couple of reasons why. As I've thought about the shift in my own mental space, I can't really pinpoint when or how it happened. And even some days now, there's still this 24/7 news cycle going on up there. Other days, ideas may surface as words and then they just sink back down into the depth of thought. Most days, it's somewhere in between, or it drifts from one to the other. And that's why I think this is important. See, I thought this was a fundamental difference in the human experience between those with and without this internal monologue. But the gap between turned out not to just be smaller than I thought, but non-existent. This isn't a two-sided coin. It's a spectrum that we move along throughout our life and even from day to day. But at some point, we hear these two concepts described and we think, yeah, that one sounds more like how I would describe my thought process or inner workings. And we just went with it. We think we're stuck with that forever and always. But assuming that the constant chatter is just that, constant means you never try and think any other way. You think you're trapped in that one little box. And therefore, you don't experience the benefits of a quieter mind. And that brings me to the practical. It's nice to think that we're maybe all more similar than we thought, but what does it matter in the day-to-day? How can it help us? Well, for me at least, honestly, my best thinking is done when that voice is the quietest. I used to think that silencing it would just mean I was zoned out, zonked, empty, but now I see that there is that surface thought, which is the voice and narration, and then there's deep thought, which is below that. It's the thought that is without language. It's where I think more true understanding and creative ideas happen. Now, while these two can coexist, the surface thought is often so loud that we can't hear the deep thought. It's a distraction. Now, this is where it gets fuzzy. For some, surface thought is spoken, that internal monologue. But for others, it's images, or maybe sounds, or just some bubble. I don't know, whatever it is, it's slightly different for everyone. We all have our own unique method. But we focused on the wrong thing. Everyone has some sort of stream, some sort of surface thought that distracts from the deeper thinking. So instead of focusing on how that surface thought differs, maybe we should focus on how to get below the surface so that we can have that deep thought more intentionally. That's why we stare out windows or at open flames. It's why we turn on familiar music in the background. It's why we meditate or pray or exercise. It's why we look at the sunset. It's why we love going for drives or walks. It's why we sit outside in the evenings and listen to the cicadas or the frogs or the crickets. We're finding these things that slow the constant flow so that we can be immersed in the deeper thoughts and the world around us. Because real experience and deep thought are much better friends with each other than either are with surface thought. That isn't to make surface thought the enemy, but it does tend to butt in when it isn't needed more often than not. Experience informs deep thought, where surface thought distracts from both. On those long car rides when I was thinking about nothing, I thought that that would be just like totally zoned out, just a blur. But it's the opposite actually. The stream zones us out of the world around us, and it zones us out of our own selves. Instead of zoning out, we need to zoom out and see. Experience doesn't need our commentary. It just needs you to let it be what it is and be the part of it that you are, not separate, but immersed. Imagine this. You're standing at an overlook. beautiful view in front of you. And then about 3 feet in front of your face, you have a painting of that view. Now, a painting is great, but it isn't needed when the view is right in front of you. Sure, you can see some of the view around the edges, but you can't fully take in and experience the view until you remove the painting. The painting is that surface thought, commentating on everything you experience. It might be nice later on, but in that moment, it's better to just have the real thing, the real experience. And that's best case scenario. That's if your stream is even related to what's going on around you. This is the more likely scenario. Same overlook, same view, but there's this person right next to you. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You get to the spot, and there's this person standing right beside you, going on and on. Why did Cherry park over there? Oh, that traffic is awful coming up here. I think we're out of Cheetos. Did you see what your Uncle Gary put on Facebook? And when we get to the next overlook, we need to get the cooler. And have you seen my on and on? They cannot appreciate the moment. And it's hard for you to appreciate the moment with this stream of nonsense going on. That person is our own heads most of the time, though. Now, it may sound harsh, but it isn't all bad. I mean, this surface thought is fine for day-to-day tasks and light conversation, planning your day. But like I said, it can butt in more often than it's needed, and it's almost always louder and brighter than necessary. We all have ways that we're already doing to quiet the surface thought, even if we don't realize it. So be intentional about it. Notice what's already working, and then start a practice. Make a ritual to train the mind. It can help you think better. It can help you have more ideas. And honestly, I think it just makes you feel better, more appreciative, more aware, more tuned in to this deep thought and the experience that we're swimming in every day, whether we notice it or not. Quiet the mind, open your ears, and have a good day. I'm Skylar. This is Rumbello Works. Thank you for watching. Thank you again so much for watching. I really appreciate you watching this video and just being here. I have a quick channel question to ask you. I need your help deciding something. I've been thinking about, in between the normal videos, posting some more unscripted, unedited, kind of over-the-shoulder type videos, studio notes. Just some, not behind the scenes, but kind of side scenes, projects and quick ideas that I'm not going to make into a full video, or I'm not sure yet if it's going to get developed. I'm wanting to be able to post more in between the main videos, and those aren't changing. I'm not wanting to put less effort into those, I'm just wanting to get more stuff out in general. And I would like to share more just project-based stuff, maybe things that's less essay or narrative. So if that sounds like a good idea, just let me know. If it doesn't sound like a good idea and I should just focus on what I'm doing so far, let me know that too. But again, I'm not changing what I'm doing. I'm enjoying these. I'm trying to get them out every 2 weeks, but I'm hoping to get them out weekly at some point. Just with my work and life schedule, it's not always possible to get them out that quickly. But this would be things that just whatever I'm working on anyway, I could put up a camera and share. Let me know what you think about that. Again, thank you for watching. Thanks for coming by the studio. I've got a couple of upgrades that hope to be featuring in a couple of upcoming videos. So keep an eye out for that. Can't wait to share that. Got some cool projects and studio upgrades planned. So I will leave it there, and I'll see you soon.